Hello guys and welcome back. In this video we're going to be doing an analysis of Tommy Shelby and Oswald Mosley from Peaky Blinders, I think season 4 and onwards. It might even be 5, I can't remember. But we're going to do a body language analysis of both guys because I believe that what both of them display is two different types of confidence and body language. They're completely different, but they both have unbelievable effects. And I just want to show you that there's more than one way to skin a cat. Not literally. So we're going to look at Tommy, which we've done before, but we're going to start with Tommy once again.
Shall I leave you alone?
Came here for company. Where's Harry?
He took the night off. And went to the pictures. How's your beautiful horse?
So this is hugely important already. We can see that basically what I want to show you guys is that Tommy just does nothing. His one form of body language is he doesn't necessarily talk a lot, he doesn't necessarily move a lot, he doesn't necessarily increase his tone or decrease his tone. It's quite monotone the whole way throughout. As I've said before, that is resemblant of a Birmingham accent, but he is just completely unreactive in every sense. Sometimes he doesn't even answer people's questions. In this scenario, he's taken something like 15 seconds to answer a question, and she's been talking ever since he walked in. She's probably said 10 times more words than he has, and he's just sat there calmly. It's unbelievable.
I just put a bullet in his head.
Was he lame?
He looked at me the wrong way. It's not a good idea to look at Tommy Shelby the wrong way.
It's the same again. He hasn't really moved. He's not said a lot of words. You know, his head isn't moving. His tonality is exactly the same throughout. You know, it's very monotone. And he just looks very, very calm and relaxed. He rarely gets out of this situation of being calm and relaxed.
What a waste.
Yeah. A waste is what it is. You know, in France, I got used to seeing men die. Never got used to seeing horses die. They die badly.
I don't get a dress like you asked. Thanks.
Again, he's doing the same thing. He doesn't react to people talking. He kind of stops and thinks about what he's going to say next. You know, there's these massive moments of silence. He doesn't use or ahs, or, to be honest, doesn't really even use facial expressions. He just kind of waits and just thinks about his response.
It's Cheltenham you're talking about. Cheltenham's Grand Affair, is it not?
The king will be there.
King George?
Nope. King Billy Kimber and all his men.
What must I do?
For £2, you'll do what I ask you to do.
You can see here how he's leant back. You know, he's very relaxed now. He made his entry into the bar. You know, you have to set yourself up. You've got to move somewhat to get to where you want to get. But he sat here, he's very relaxed. You know, she looks quite uptight. We can see here the way she sat in her chair, you know. Sat straight, sat upright. You know, it seems as though she's not sat back in her chair here. If we go back, what we can see is, it doesn't seem as though, you know, we've got this gap here. We can slightly see a gap where her back isn't exactly against the chair. And we can see that there's a bigger gap here than there is there, which means that her body is rotated and turned to be looking at Tommy, which means that he is the focal point and he's asserted body language dominance already, because accidentally, subconsciously, whatever you want to call it, she has angled her body and her chair, as we can see from the legs here, in order to face Tommy. Whereas he's actually looking off into that direction, his shoulders are even pointed into that direction, and he's sat back relaxed in his chair. So it shows the dominance hierarchy there.
I want 3. If I am meeting a king, I won't be wearing a cheap dress.
Again, a giant pause, no reaction. It's just such commonplace for Tommy to do this. Look, he literally has this facial expression 90% of the time, where he's more of a thinker than a talker. And that's why I wanted to show you the difference between Mosley and Tommy, which we'll get to in a minute.
And I asked you to let me sing. It's part of the deal now, too.
Since when?
Since you nearly smiled.
And another pause with no response. Do you know what, guys? Actually, it's very similar. I don't know if you guys have watched the old video that I had from the MSI college days of Drive. What's his name? Ryan Gosling. So I did one on Ryan Gosling in the film Drive, and he says something crazy like 280 words or less than 800 words in the entire film. I can't remember the exact total. It's something around that amount. But he says barely any words in the entire film. Enough, so little that people have been able to watch the whole film and count. That's a little amount of words he actually says. And it's a very similar reaction as to Tommy. I think both guys kind of get talked at, and instead of responding, they go quiet, they nod, maybe a little smirk, they move on, and then the other person starts talking again, and their reaction was enough to kind of answer the question and carry on with the social interaction. It's a very strange thing to do. It's very hard to do, but it works. It works really, really well if you've got the right persona to go with it, which is why I'm doing the comparison, which I'll show you guys later.
Saturday nights, open and easy. Everyone gets to sing their song just like we did in Dublin.
You never worked in Dublin, so don't lie to me.
That there is a challenge. It's not such body language, but it's more in the words that you say and personality traits. But the way he's just challenged her, and you never worked in Dublin, don't lie to me. It's quite authoritative words. It's quite assertive. Matched with the body language, it works perfectly.
I asked around about that pub he said you used to work in. I have friends over there. No one has heard of you.
Now that Tommy's saying a couple more words, we can hear that his pacing is fantastic. So one thing that not a lot of people know about body language, and a lot of presidents are taught this. I think personally Obama was the best to have ever done this. Clinton was pretty good too, but I think Obama was the best ever, is the pacing of your words and the speed at which they come out. So you get a lot of people who are low on confidence. I know a lot of women do this. A lot of women talk faster than men because historically they've had to squeeze their words into a small amount of time in order to be heard. And children do it too, because at any moment they could be interrupted or told to be quiet and sit in the corner. And they talk very fast like this, and they try and get all their words out. And Dad, watch me, watch me. Whereas when somebody becomes a grown adult, they won't talk too slow and with no ums and ahs, but it will be a very accurate pace in which they get their words out. And if you want to see this done perfectly, use Obama. People hang on his every word. I think the other one that does it very well is Morgan Freeman, and people say it's their voices, but the speed at which they're getting their words out is hugely, hugely important. And I think there's actually like a golden ratio as such, where you say this many words in this short space of time. So every 60 seconds you should be saying a certain number of words or something like that. And I think presidents and actors, but presidents especially, have worked very, very, very hard in order to get that pacing perfect so that people respect them, trust them. You know, there's so many components that come with it, and it makes you look like a stronger man. Tommy Shelby's fantastic at it, as is Mosley. That was an important scene. As we can see here, Tommy's holding the eye contact. Watch this.
No one has heard of you.
There. If you can hold eye contact with a woman, I've said it time and time again, and she can look down, and that's how the eye contact is broken, there's just something that happens, guys. I don't know whether it's a dominance hierarchy thing. I don't know whether it's a submissive and kind of aggressive man thing, you know, where the natural roles are formed or established. But once you do something like that and you get that reaction, that's the time to make a move or go and sit closer, or, you know, if the night's been going well, or if you're on a third date, that's the time to maybe go in for a kiss or ask her back to your place. I've done this many a time myself, where you've been holding eye contact for, I don't know, you've been having, let's say, a 15-minute conversation, and you've held eye contact for most of it without being creepy. Of course, you can look away at different times, but the woman will then, you know, be holding eye contact with you, and she'll look down, and it's kind of it's programmed into our brains that that is a submissive response. She's kind of given up those shit tests that a lot of guys go on about, that dominance, that submissive role. She's given that up, and she said, okay, you know, she's given up the dominant role, and she said, okay, I'm going to be submissive. This man wins. You know, that's what it is subconsciously. And as soon as you see that, I'm telling you, even if you're walking through the street and you catch the eyes of a woman, if you can stare her in the eyes, and let's say look her in the eyes, because stare sounds a bit weird, right? And you can hold that eye contact for maybe 3 to 4 seconds, which doesn't sound like a lot. But if you do that for 3 to 4 seconds, you'll realize how long that actually feels. You know, and a lot of people count to 4 and they go 1, 2, 3, 4. It's the stupidest thing in the modern world. You've got to start from 0. You start a stopwatch, it goes 0 and 1. So it's a lot longer than most people think. You know, we go 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, but when we count up, we start from 1. It's the weirdest thing ever. But if you're staring somebody in the eyes, you count that. 0 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. That's pretty awkward by around about the 3rd second. And, you know, 4 to 5 seconds I found is really the golden zone when people begin to feel awkward and look away. If it goes beyond that, I find it super impressive. I've had some women that have done it. I believe that they've been trained in body language. First thing I do is get up, go over and say, hey, you know, what do you know about body language? And they usually laugh and say, yeah, my dad taught me, and stuff like that. It's usually pretty easy. Or, you know, the nature of their job. Oh, I work for GCHQ, a government. People believe that it's like 007. They believe there's a lot of spies that work there. But, you know, a lot of people are trained. It's kind of like a central intelligence kind of place in Cheltenham. This is actually mentioned in this scene, Cheltenham, actually, the races. It's a place in Gloucestershire that I live near. And, you know, you get a few people that have that kind of training. But on the whole, most women will look away 3 to 4 seconds. If they look to the right and left, maybe they're not interested in you. Maybe they've got high confidence. Maybe it didn't work. You know, but if you get a woman who locks eyes with you for 3 to 4 seconds, maybe she smiles or something, but she looks down, go straight over. You'll probably get the number. 9 times out of 10, you'll get the number. Unless she's in a relationship and she's just, you know, she's realized that she's fucked up. But, you know, you've got a giant chance when that happens. And we've just seen that scene there. It happens all the time, guys.
My guess is you're a girl from a good family who got herself pregnant.
Great eye contact here, especially when you're talking. It's very hard to make good eye contact when you're talking. It's easy to look somebody in the eyes when they're talking, but when you're talking, it's very hard to look somebody in the eyes because most people are in their own head thinking, how do I sound? Am I saying the right things? We all lack confidence. We're all insecure in the modern era. I don't know how it's happened, whether it's porn, TV, social media, but very few of us have this level of confidence. She did it again. She looked down again.
It's not something I want known.
And bringing a child into the world alone ruins your life. Right. So I'm right.
Same again. So there's 3 times she's done, you know, he's held that strong eye contact. She's done those 3 submissive looks. If this was a real life sense, I'd say, you know, under the circumstances, based on what they're discussing, it's quite a negative moment. But if this was just natural flirting, at that time right there, I'd probably move a bit closer, or, you know, start doing things that insinuate, you know, sex or a relationship, or moving to the next stage.
And Polly is wrong.
Right about what?
Doesn't matter.
Looks like it matters to you.
Family business.
He's got pretty slow movements as well. I think he could be slower. I think personally, if I was directing this, I'd tell him to move a little bit slower. If we watch his hand here with the cigarette, pretty slow, but I think it should be slower.
You won't tell anyone my secret.
Do you think I tell people things? So what do you sing?
Anything you want.
Right.
And that's an invasion of privacy, invasion of personal space. If we just take this back ever so slightly.
So what do you sing?
Anything you want.
Right.
We can see here, you know, he's invading that private space. There's a stretched out arm. That's as far as it can go, pretty much. And it seems like a simple thing, but he could easily have slapped the table with the right hand over here. He could have easily slapped his own leg or something. But slapping the table closer to this individual means that he's confident enough to invade her private space. Let's move on to the next clip. Okay, so in this scene we've got I can't remember the guy's name, the police officer, what's his name? Never mind. But we've got Tommy again, and we can see an interaction between 2 men here, two alpha males, I would say. And it's so interesting to see how little Tommy actually does.
Shouldn't you be busy?
When you plan something well, there's no need to rush.
Do you know something? I actually trust you to do this. Do you think there might be some measure of respect developing between us? Old foes that have grown to admire each other and see each other's professional virtues.
So we can see there, this very dominant pose. It's very confident and relaxed. You know, Tommy's not even looking at him, number 1. So he's looking straight ahead. He's minding his own business. He's doing what he wants to do. Number 2, I used to do this pose a lot, where you stand feet probably wide apart, I would imagine. I can't see them, but feet wide apart. Palms flat on the surface that you're touching. Obviously here I believe he's got a cigarette. But arms straight out in front of you, on the surface that's in front of you. You know, you're taking up a lot of space. So you're dominating this area, your area. And then ideally, like I said, your feet should be wide so that you can take up more space at the bar. I'll never forget, I did this in reverse one day, and some woman came up to me and said, "Move." Obviously I didn't say a word, just laughed. And she was like, "You look like a dick. I don't know what you're trying to do." And I just kind of ignored her and laughed again, and just stayed with my arms wide and my legs wide, and just stood there with my drink, minding my own business. And then she walked away, and around about 60 seconds later, she came back and asked for my number. So sometimes you just got to stay in the trenches and just believe in what you're doing.
No virtues. Personally, I think not.
Oh, I think not.
Well, I drink to that.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be upstanding for the national anthem.
So is the plan that you'll stay together forever? Or perhaps you'll...
Just look how unreactive Tommy is. I don't think he's moved since this scene started. He's in the exact same pose. And, you know, you could say, oh, he's not doing a lot. You know, what kind of body language is there to analyze? But there's so much, because the fact he's not doing a lot, you know, when these people say less is more, that's exactly what we're getting here. We're getting less is more with Tommy. You know, he's just leaning on this table. He's just looking straight ahead. He's just in his own space. And that is massive in terms of confidence. Like if you've ever seen... The one thing I always thought was a separator. If you've ever seen people outside a building, maybe waiting for somebody else, or somebody goes into a public toilet or into a restaurant to grab a drink or something, or in a shop, and somebody's got to wait outside for them. You know, like a boyfriend waiting for his girlfriend who's just gone inside. That guy will then start picking up his phone, or if they're sat at a restaurant and the girl goes to the toilet, that guy picks up his phone, he starts looking around, you know, he's very he starts flinching everywhere. You know, not very relaxed at all. Whereas the guy who just stands still confidently, or has his arms stretched out on the chair and just sits back looking straight forward, not like a psychopath of course, but just minding his own business, that is inner confidence. Because even though you're on your own, you're not worried about the, let's say, tens or hundreds of people around you, who a lot of guys get in their own head and think, oh, they're looking at me, they're judging me. Are people wondering why I'm on my own? Do I look weird? You know, there's other women walking past. What are they thinking? Just be in your own space.
Whore for you. Take her husband's money. Is that the plan? How wrong I was about her.
I was wrong about her as well. You once said to me that men like us can never be loved. She loves me. She told me. She loves me. And all you got was a bullet and a fucking wolf-head kind.
We have that kind of monotone again, that very flat tone. There's two ways to do that tonality, and we'll see it when we get to Oswald Mosley. But Tommy's body language matches his voice.
Wow. Bully for you.
Congruency is a big thing. Consistency and congruency is a massive thing in body language. I remember when I did my course a few years ago, that was one of the main things they spoke about, of how, let's say you're somebody who's got a body like The Rock. You know, you've got a great frame, your body language is very, as they would say, alpha male. But then on the other side of the coin, you've got a voice which you talk very quickly, maybe you talk in a high pitch, maybe you sound stressed all the time. You know, those 2 or 3 components don't really go together, and everything needs to be congruent. So if you've got one trait that is a certain way, it's good to put everything in the same order. You know, especially the words you're saying. So if you got on a plane, for example, and a pilot was like, nobody panic, the plane's going to be fine, we're going to take off, it's going to be fine. You'd think, well, your tonality and your pacing doesn't really match what you're saying, you know, so how can I trust what you're saying? You know, or if in vice versa, if the pilot was saying, the plane is crashing, everybody's going to die, this is the end, good luck everybody, see you on the other side. You know, you'd think, why is he talking like that? Like, he's saying that we're all going to die and that the plane's crashing, but for some unknown reason, he doesn't seem too troubled. Is this a joke? You know, you wouldn't be able to trust the words that he's saying. And the words that you're saying need to match your tonality.
This I know. Ahead of you is damnation. But I have the love of God and the certainty of salvation.
I know what you did to Polly.
There's a long pause and fantastic eye contact again, beamed in on the other guy. But he turned at his own pace. That's what I like. Too many people are reactive. He turned at his own pace, he's holding eye contact, and I believe he starts walking towards him now.
I know what happened to Michael in jail. Today, It'll be me, Dad. Or you. But whoever it is.
Now, the whisper is a very good effect when you lean in. If you whisper, you know, it has a very strong effect and gets people to really listen to you attentively.
You'll wake up in hell tomorrow.
Ladies and gentlemen, the runners and riders are under starboard order.
That's very strong eye contact. Unbelievable eye contact there. And this is another trait of powerful men, is they know when to exit. You know, they can just leave without saying, you know, it's nice to say goodbye, but they don't linger too long. So I know a lot of people that they have to crack a joke before they leave. They have to say one more word, or they're about to leave and then they have to come back and ask another question about what's going on tomorrow. Okay, so we know what we're going to do. Like, just leave. Just leave. As soon as you're ready to leave, just bye, goodbye, and then just exit. Just make your leave. There's no point lingering and making it longer than what it should be. It starts to get weird. Let's move to Oswald Mosley now. So the first clip we're going to look at is when he's talking to Tommy Shelby. Now, the things we have to look out for with Oswald Mosley is that he talks a lot more. His body language isn't necessarily as, let's say, basic, or isn't as dominant as Tommy Shelby. You know, sometimes he has his feet close together. Sometimes he crosses his legs in the wrong fashion. But I think because he's so confident, I don't think it matters. You know, I've met a lot of people like this in the past. One in particular who was extremely rich, maybe worth 100 million, in his 50s. Tall guy, went to Harvard, went to Oxford, St. Paul's, high-ranking friends, you know, a model wife, a lot of money, as I said, multiple homes. He's worked for some of the biggest companies in the world, and he was CEO of some of them. And I just think he's been in every situation you've ever seen, and he doesn't care. I remember when I walked in on him once, and he was talking to somebody on loudspeaker from it was one of the biggest companies in the world. I think it was one of the FTSE 100 companies. And he was just butchering this guy. He was just butchering. This guy was like the CEO of one of these FTSE 100 companies. I think they were like one of the 10th biggest in the UK. And he was just ripping him a new asshole. It was unbelievable, the level of power that he had over this other man who was a massively powerful and successful man, and he made him feel like a little boy. And I'm not saying that's good to do, but there's something about people who are wealthy, who are posh, who are brought up in a sense of they've been taught the right way, especially by way of social interactions. And the other thing is they've never had anything to worry about, because usually these people are in great shape. They care about physical health. They've got great education. They've always had money. So those kind of stresses that change our brain chemistry, they haven't had those. They've never had things to worry about like debts, and they've never had a reason to have low confidence. They've been at the best school. They've been intelligent. They've come from money. They have powerful people around them. You know, they just expect good things to happen for them. And that is exactly what Oswald Mosley portrays. And, you know, if you can get to that level, guys, it will change your life.
Strategies. Yes, I do.
Please understand what I'm offering you as we go forward, Mr. Shelby.
We can already hear that his pacing and his tonality is perfection. And the way that he puts emphasis on certain words, I know it's the posh accent, but the way he emphasizes certain words is unbelievable. It really punches home the points that he's making.
When we succeed, even the king will not be above us. Power.
That was another emphasis. That's another tonality thing. Power. You know, the way that he said it. It draws your attention to why he's saying it. And nobody ever starts a sentence with just power. So what he does, and he does very well, and the guy that I spoke about earlier that I used to work for, he used to do the same thing. He used to say, if we can say something in 7 words instead of 70, he said we should. And he was all about saying something, making the same point in less words. And Oswald Mosley is a genius at that, which is a form of tonality.
Like plugging into the mains. a lighthouse be? Your millions of dollars safe in Switzerland and access to every dirty-minded swan in England.
His eye contact is fantastic, and the fact he stood up to make this point as well. There's two scenes where he's done this, but we'll just focus on this one. Obviously, eye contact, fantastic, but he stood up so that he can have that kind of dominance where he looks down like he's belittling Tommy. And I actually think that Tommy feels, from what I've seen in multiple scenes, his body language actually, I know they're acting, guys, people always comment this, but they do it for a reason. You know, they're trained to make things look real. And what he's doing is changing his body language when he's around Oswald Mosley, so he's not as confident. He definitely takes him off guard. And again, didn't say bye, just left when it was the appropriate time. And I see this all the time with men who are at the top of their game. They just leave when they're supposed to leave.
The man, what about?
Watch his thumbs here. He's doing this on purpose. This is what I mean by acting for body language. He's talking about Mosley arriving, and to look at his thumbs. He's fiddling with his thumbs, which is a sign of nervousness.
Meat is the devil.
Just look at that air of confidence, if not arrogance, in the way he's just walked into a room, hasn't said a word, and just stared the most aggressive guy straight in the eye. And definitely has won that kind of eye contact interaction there. Watch this. Do you know what, guys? I know it's in slow motion, but the poise on his face, the actor, I can't remember his name, he was in Hunger Games, wasn't he? But the poise on his face there is unbelievable. That is confidence personified.
We would like to talk business.
They've cut that bit out there, which is a shame. But what he does is he walked straight into the room. He's looked at one guy, looked at the other, looked at Tommy, and what he did is he immediately just sat down, which is it's a massively dominant move. He's just taken control of the room. They've left the seat open for him, but he has walked into the center of the room, took a seat, and just taken over the entire dynamic of this room.
Michael Gray. You lost all your cousin's money in America playing the fool.
Fantastic eye contact again.
A nightclub in Detroit called the Gladiator is your regular? You lost.
See the way that Michael looked away. He's been beaten again by this body language from Mosley. And it's a completely different approach to Tommy Shelby. He uses more intelligence in the words that he uses rather than his body language itself. But I would say his poise and his eye contact is fantastic. Everything else he doesn't really care about because he knows he's just got that confidence to back it up.
The money and found a wife there. And poor old Arthur Shelby standing there.
Another trick that a lot of people use, they talk about somebody but they don't turn to look at them because it would be such an effort. We can actually see from his shoulders, obviously he's looking forward here, but we can see his shoulders here. I'd say this one is closer and that one seems as though it's turned. So if anything, I would say that he's still turned this way rather than his body being turned that way.
There at the window is afraid his wife will never return. My spies tell me she's been seen with another man.
Arthur. Est-ce qu'il se Silvel?
And bingo. 20
More emphasis on the word there, the bingo.
seconds in and I have them speaking their wog-lingo.
More fantastic eye contact. That's very hard to do. The way he actually turns his head but holds eye contact. Watch this.
And then I have them speaking their wog-lingo.
There, he held it the whole way throughout.
I'm sure our host will forgive me if I use this platform, this gathering of friends.
So this is the final scene that I want you guys to see, and his body language isn't necessarily good here. There's a lot of flaws, but the words that he's saying and his poise is why he's got that gravitas, why people are just gravitated towards him.
And like minds, to give you, his trusted allies, an early announcement of a long overdue event. I want to tell you, good folk first.
So the way that, number one here, the way that he's pronouncing his words are fantastic. You know, everything is done with emphasis, especially the first word in a sentence. We can see here,
I want to tell
he's gesturing higher up. When you gesture higher up, it's seen as quite aggressive, you know, excitement. And Tommy would make all his gestures down here in the truth plane. Nothing would ever come above that kind of line. I don't know why I made that little one there. Nothing would come above that line or below kind of his belly button, his midsection. Everything would be around that area. And that's because he's probably a lot calmer. Whereas Oswald Mosley is much more excitable, much more, I would say, openly aggressive or just openly confident. And because he's more flamboyant, he's making gestures higher up.
you good folk first that with the dawn of a new decade, I will be setting a new...
There's another confident pose there. See if we can get that exact moment.
I will be...
Obviously, it's very simple to do, but you're on a stage in front of a lot of people. And the ability to, you know, a lot of people get shy when they're doing public speaking and they might gesture with their hands. You know, out here, might be one hand there, and they're reluctant to put their arms any wider because they feel vulnerable. A lot of body language is, that's why people fold their arms. You know, let's say a girl folds her arms when somebody's trying to talk to her. She's very shy. What she's doing is covering up this midsection here. This is where the vital organs are. And this is why people put a hand over their neck as well. They rub their neck and they kind of stroke their chin and stuff. What they're doing is protecting the two most vulnerable areas. It's very weird. It's very primitive. But it's protection of the vital organs and the areas like the jugular vein that we could get killed from very quickly. And as much as we think we're advanced, we're not. You know, primitively, we're thinking to ourselves, that looks pretty cool, doesn't it? We're thinking to ourselves, okay, this could be a potential threat. I could be vulnerable here. You know, Tommy Shelby turns his back on his enemies a lot. That's because he's so confident. He doesn't believe that he could get killed. And just as I said earlier, with people speaking quicker in order to be heard because they want to get their words out quicker, it's the same with people maybe folding their arms, covering up their midsection. A woman putting a handbag on the side that the guy's trying to approach her on. You know, it's anything to use as a shield. Maybe it's your arms to block, like boxing. Maybe it's a handbag, like Captain America using a shield. And it works in the same sense. But very confident people will openly gesture very wide. They'll take up more space. And they'll leave the midsections and the throats more open. And a lot of people, they cover their mouth when they're talking to. You see a lot of women who, when they're laughing, they cover up their mouth. They don't want to show their teeth. There's a lot of shyness in the world, but this is fantastic to see.
Setting a new course. Setting up a new political movement here, in the very heart of England. And Mr.
There's more emphasis there, and just as we caught it there, he's pointing to Mr. Shelby. We've got another outstretched arm. So massive emphasis on his words. You know, chin is elevated up in the air, strong direct eye contact, and this arm outstretched. So he's doing multiple things there which just kind of display his dominance.
Shelby will be with me, shoulder to shoulder. It will offer a new conception of politics in which the great character of the British, our true character, will be reborn.
Now, just to stop it there on the last piece, because I don't think there's much more to be seen. But the way that he emphasizes his words, I know I've spoken about it, but that little section there where every word is pronounced properly, every syllable is pronounced properly, and it rolls off of his tongue. Now, we don't all have to speak with a posh accent, but be proud about what you're saying. When you're talking, know that people want to, or believe that people want to hear what you're saying. Pronounce your words strongly. that's what Oswald Mosley, or the character that's playing Oswald Mosley, does fantastically here. And I think in this era especially, just the other day I was in a supermarket in London, and there was a young lad next to me, and he was trying to get the attention of the guy in the shop. He was trying to ask if, how much is this, or I can't remember what he was asking, but he was trying to get the attention of one of the workers in the shop. And he was practically whispering. He was saying, excuse me, hey, excuse me. And he said this maybe 4 or 5 times, and the guy didn't turn around. Obviously, he couldn't hear him. The only reason I heard him is that I walked past, and I was already looking at him when I walked past. And this went on for probably like 10, 15 seconds. I had to stop and look. I thought it was really interesting. And this guy, he's a young guy, handsome guy, good muscle definition, but he was probably 15, 16. And the problem is he's got a lot to be confident for, but in this era, very few of us believe that our words are validated. We're very scared to speak openly. We want to keep everything hush-hush, or a one-to-one discussion. If we speak too loud and other people hear, we start to get shy about our conversations. And it's definitely something that comes with age, but I think in times gone by, I think people were a lot more confident in the way that they spoke. They emphasized their words. And like I said at the start, wealthy people who have grown up in posh families with maybe double-barreled names, they don't have this issue. They don't have this issue because they've been brought up in a sense of, you are somebody special. Maybe they're slightly arrogant. Maybe they don't understand the world like we do. But they've never had those low confidence moments because they've never had to. They were encouraged to speak. They were set challenges by their parents of, you will write a poem and read it out to the whole family in front of everybody at the age of 7. And they set them little challenges like this, and I feel like their confidence is through the roof, and that's exactly what Oswald Mosley is displaying here. But for the purpose of this video, guys, I'll wrap that up. And the conclusion here is that there's 2 ways to skin a cat. So both men are super confident. I would say Mosley is probably the more probably appealing figure, depends on what you're looking for, but I think Mosley would achieve a lot higher in the world of success, I think, because people gravitate towards somebody like that. In terms of women, that would be maybe a split down the middle as to which one they find attractive. Some women like the outspoken, confident man who is doing a speech on stage, and other women like the quiet, brooding man. There's not really one type. Some women like the aggressive Arthur Shelby type. If I was running a company and I wanted to hire somebody out of those 3, I would consider Arthur, because I quite like the aggressive, get your work done type. But out of those 2 men, they're both confident. They're both what would be considered alpha males. They're both dominant. They have different forms of aggression, but they get towards those end goals in different ways. Tommy's a lot more quiet. He says less, he does less, but his actions speak for him. Oswald Mosley, fantastic education, intelligent individual, very articulate, and he uses that to his advantage. And while he's doing this speech, his arms were wide, but his feet were close together. And there's certain things that I would have changed about the way he moved if that was an Arthur who was trying to be aggressive, or a Tommy who was trying to be, the dominant individual. But this is done through Mosley in a more, like I said, intelligent, articulate, educated way. And his focus is very much on his tonality, his poise, and I would say 100% his eye contact.